For 7 years, my relationship with Victoria Young had felt unshakable. Everyone thought we were a mismatch, but she stood by me, firm in her conviction. And yet, she would never agree to marry me. It all unraveled the day I discovered she had mistakenly used my credit card to buy wedding supplies. She claimed they were for her cousin, but then I stumbled upon a set of wedding photos online featuring her with another man. Only then did I understand. The reason she wouldn't marry me was that she was waiting for someone else. On my way home from work, a credit card transaction alert popped up on my phone. I didn't think much of it. The Black Friday sales were in full swing, and my girlfriend Victoria had been using that card for a lot of her shopping. I was about to swipe the notification away, as usual, but I accidentally tapped on it. On the payment confirmation screen, 4 words stood out: wedding planning services. A strange feeling crept over me as I stared at the screen. Before I could make sense of it, Victoria called. The moment I answered, her sweet voice flowed through the phone. Hearing her, the exhaustion from a long day at work instantly vanished. Victoria and I had been together for 7 years. Just 3 months ago, a job transfer had forced us into a long-distance relationship. As soon as the call connected, Victoria brought up the payment. Lily was piggybacking on an order on my phone earlier and accidentally used your card at checkout, she explained. I'll make sure she treats you to a nice dinner to apologize when you're back. Victoria's cheerful explanation and lighthearted tone felt a little too deliberate, suppressing the odd feeling in my gut. I asked casually, "Why is she suddenly buying wedding supplies?" Victoria answered without missing a beat. "To get married, of course." Married? If I remembered correctly, Victoria's cousin, Lily Young, had just turned 20 this year. Before my transfer, I hadn't even heard she had a boyfriend. How could she be getting married after only 3 months? The question flickered in my mind for a moment before being replaced by a pang of envy. Victoria and I had been together for 7 long years, and we still weren't married. I had brought it up in our 3rd year together, but Victoria had shut it down flatly, saying she wasn't done enjoying our life as a couple. After that, whenever the topic of marriage came up, she would skillfully change the subject. I had always assumed she just wasn't ready to be tied down by marriage, but I couldn't help but envy those who found love and sealed it with a wedding. Lost in thought, I voiced my feelings aloud. "Vicky, when my transfer is over, let's get married too. I only had to stay in Anson City for a year before I could return to my old position." 3 months had already passed, leaving only 9 to go. A sense of anticipation bloomed in my chest, but Victoria remained silent on the other end of the line. Her silence was like a bucket of ice water dumped over my head, snapping me back to reality. Before I could say anything else, she finally spoke. "Let's talk about it after you're transferred back." It wasn't a direct refusal, but I could hear the dismissiveness in her voice. She still didn't want to marry me. I took a deep breath to compose myself and changed the subject. "When is your cousin's wedding? I can come back that day to be with you." The moment the words left my mouth, Victoria's rejection was swift and sharp. "No, don't," perhaps sensing her own intensity. She paused, her tone softening before she continued. "I mean, you don't need to take time off just for that. My cousin and I have it all planned out. I'm going to tag along on her honeymoon to do some sketching. Even if you came back, we wouldn't have much time together. It would be better if you just came back during a holiday. That's all. I have to go now." Without giving me a chance to respond, Victoria hastily hung up the phone. Chapter 2. Staring at the disconnected call, I stood by the side of the road, lost in silence. In the 3 months since my job transfer had separated us, Victoria had grown increasingly distant. When I called, she would often end the conversation abruptly, texting me much later with the excuse that she was busy. I kept telling myself not to overthink it, but a growing unease settled in my heart. I couldn't understand what had happened. We had been in love for 7 years. How could things change so drastically in less than 3 months? I walked back to my company dorm in a daze. Before bed, I was mindlessly scrolling through my social media feed when a blog titled "A Lamb's Secret Diary" caught my eye. My thumb froze. After a 10-year crush, my dream is finally coming true. The post was accompanied by a 9-image photo collage of wedding pictures. The couple in the photos was stunning and looked perfect together, but the sight made my breath catch in my throat. My eyes stung, blurring my vision. Because One of the people in the photos was my girlfriend, Victoria Young, who I had just spoken to that afternoon. The other person wasn't a complete stranger either. Once, while cleaning, I had found a photo album tucked away at the bottom of a small box where Victoria kept her valuables. The album was filled exclusively with pictures of this man. When she found me with it, she had reacted with uncharacteristic anger, warning me never to go through her things again. The next day, she was back to her usual self and even bought me a gift to apologize. I never even got the chance to ask her who the man in the photos was. Now that nearly forgotten memory resurfaced, hitting me like a boomerang. With trembling fingers, I clicked on her profile and began scrolling through her posts. My eyes landed on a post from exactly 3 months ago. 3 months ago, the same time I was transferred for work, and the same time the man from the photo album, Ethan Miller, had returned to the country. During the 3 months I was away, Victoria had used this account to document every little moment they spent together. No wonder she never had time for me. A bitter smile touched my lips. Refusing to give up, I kept scrolling. Before the 3-month mark, the posts were much less frequent, but the few that existed were enough to shatter me. He proposed to me again, but I still can't let you go. His build and style are so much like yours. It's like you're still by my side. The he she was referring to had to be me. As I read post after post, my eyes burned and an unbearable bitterness filled my heart. It didn't take long for me to find a post from 7 years ago. Maybe it's time I forgot about you. If it's not you, what difference does it make who I'm with? My gaze fell on the date of the post. It was from the day before Victoria had agreed to be my girlfriend. A wave of grief and rage washed over me, leaving me breathless. No wonder she had refused to marry me all these years. It turned out there was someone else she had been unable to forget for a decade. My 7 years of devotion couldn't compete with the man who lived in her heart. I didn't sleep at all that night. By the next morning, a strange calm had settled over me. I wanted to call and confront Victoria, but I didn't know what to say. On the 3rd day, I saw she had posted again. This time, it was a picture of a nearly finished wedding suite. Every detail showed just how much love and care she had poured into decorating it. I took a deep breath and dialed her number. She picked up quickly. The background was noisy. I cut straight to the point, my nerves stretched taut. "Vicky, is there anything you want to tell me?" Chapter 3. Victoria didn't notice the coldness in my voice. When she heard my question, she seemed to think about it seriously. The noise around her quieted down, and I heard her say with a laugh, "Oh, I remember now, our 7-year anniversary is in 3 days. But it's okay if we miss one. Work has to come first." She spoke without a hint of deception. If I hadn't seen her secret blog and known she was getting married in 3 days, I probably wouldn't have suspected a thing. All I wanted now was to demand why she could maintain our relationship as if nothing was wrong when she was about to marry someone else. And had she ever truly loved me during these 7 years, but I held back. In a flat voice, I asked again, "The company gave me time off. I'll be free in 3 days. Are you sure you don't need me to come see you?" With the background noise gone, Victoria finally caught the change in my tone. She hesitated. "Sincere, are you upset?" After I denied it, Victoria audibly relaxed. "How about I come see you after I get through this busy period?" Her words just made me feel weary. I muttered a non-committal and hung up. There was no time off from the company. It had just been a test. Even if she was getting married, I had hoped she would at least be honest with me so we could part on good terms. But she hadn't. For the next 2 days I didn't contact Victoria, though she sent me a few messages. On the 3rd day, I took a leave of absence from work. It was only 7 p.m. when I arrived back in Linchester. Victoria had mentioned in her blog's comments section that her family and Ethan's were having a celebratory dinner tonight. I took a taxi directly to the restaurant I had managed to track down. Even from outside the private room, I could feel the lively atmosphere within. As I pushed the door open, I saw Victoria, a blissful expression on her face, being fed a bite of food by Ethan Miller. The moment she saw me, she shot up from her chair. The screech of the chair against the floor silenced the entire room. "Sincere, what do you... Come outside with me." Now. Seeing me step into the room, Victoria rushed over, trying to pull me out. I stood my ground, a sarcastic smile on my face. "Why should I leave? Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" Ethan, who had been watching me with a frown, walked over and put a protective arm around Victoria's shoulder. "Vicky, who is this?" Victoria stood trapped between us, her eyes darting around in distress. "Ethan, he's..." Before she could explain, her parents, Walter and Martha Young, approached with stern faces. They flanked Victoria, shielding her as if I were a threat. Their tone was condescending. "What are you doing here? Let me tell you, Victoria is getting married tomorrow. If you keep pestering her, I'll call the police and report you for harassment. Ethan's parents own a company overseas, and you? Look at yourself. An orphan with no parents. No matter how hard you work, you'll never be worth a single finger of his. If you don't want me to have security throw you out, you'll get lost right now." I looked at Victoria, hidden behind her parents, and a cold sneer formed on my lips. Because I was an orphan, no matter how hard I worked, even after I was quickly promoted to manager and gave her control of my salary, her parents had always opposed our relationship. That was why I had been so moved by Victoria's persistence. But now I knew the truth. She had told her parents that I was the one clinging to her, refusing to let her go. I had been her backup plan all along. Now that Ethan was back, the spare tire was no longer needed. Amid the chaos, Victoria suddenly blurted out, "He's my ex-boyfriend, Chapter 4, from across the room." I saw her eyes flicker, unable to meet mine. "He's just having a hard time accepting it and followed me here. I'll talk to him alone, convince him to leave." With that, Victoria pushed past her parents, grabbed my wrist, and quickly pulled me outside. She didn't stop until we were out of the restaurant. Then she turned to me, her face flushed with anger. "Sincere, why did you come back without telling me? Didn't I tell you?" I cut her off with a cold laugh. "Tell me not to come back so you could marry Ethan Miller without a hitch?" Victoria was speechless. After all, just a few days ago she had lied to me that her cousin Lily was the one getting married.
"How did you find out?" I held out my hand. "That doesn't matter anymore. As of now, we're through. Give me my key back." 4 years after graduation, I had saved enough from my job and side hustles to buy a house and a car. The key to that house was in Victoria's possession. Victoria bit her lip and fumbled in her purse, pulling out the key. But when I reached for it, she wouldn't let go. "I never meant to hide it from you. I just couldn't find the right time to tell you. Can we still be friends? Friends?" I was stunned by her shamelessness. I couldn't comprehend how she could even say such a thing. I yanked the key from her hand and answered her with cold finality. "No." Victoria stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief, as if she never expected that answer. "Sincere, after 7 years together, how can you be so cold-blooded?" Her accusation made me stop in my tracks. I turned back, my gaze like ice. "When it comes to being cold-blooded, Victoria, no one compares to you. If you hadn't brought it up, I might have thought you'd forgotten we had 7 years together. After all, for every single one of those years, you treated me as nothing more than Ethan's stand-in. Before you ask if we can be friends, why don't you ask yourself if there was ever a single moment in these 7 years when you weren't looking at his shadow through me?" Victoria had never seen me so aggressive. She took a step back, avoiding my gaze. Just as she was about to say something else, Ethan walked out of the restaurant. He looked at me with a barely concealed hostility. "Are you two done? Mom and Dad sent me to check on you." He then added, "Mr. Clark, would you like to join us for a bite?" I ignored his hostile and pointed invitation, let out a short, derisive laugh, and walked away. As I sat in the taxi on the way back, a sense of calm washed over me, a stark contrast to the agony I had anticipated. Before coming here, I had imagined the crushing pain of seeing the truth with my own eyes, but it turned out I was much better at letting go than I thought. Even without the love of the past 7 years, I had to move forward. Chapter 5. But when I opened the door to the house I had been away from for only 3 months and saw a layer of dust covering the floor, a wave of desolation washed over me. I stood in the doorway, my gaze lingering on the various decorations. This place, which I had called home, was filled with memories of Victoria and me. The large photo of us on the wall, the matching slippers we bought together, the couple's mugs and all the little trinkets. After a moment of silence, I found a large trash bag and threw everything into it, then carried it down to the dumpster. If this was a clean break, it had to be absolute. As for the things that belonged only to Victoria, I packed them into a separate box. Watching the remnants of our life together disappear piece by piece, I felt my heart sink, rise, and sink again, until it finally settled into a state of quiet emptiness. I spent the night in the dusty bedroom. The next morning, I took the box of Victoria's things to a shipping station. I had booked a ticket back to Anson City for that afternoon. But before I knew it, I found myself in a taxi outside the hotel where Victoria was holding her wedding. By a stroke of coincidence, I arrived just in time to see her stepping out of a car, dressed in a traditional, ornate red gown.
I had once researched wedding traditions, eagerly anticipating the day it would be my wedding with Victoria. Now I supposed Ethan had just completed the door games and was bringing her to the hotel to change into her white wedding dress for the ceremony. On this day, Victoria was even more beautiful than I had ever imagined. "We're here. Aren't you getting out, buddy?" The driver's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. I shook my head and said calmly, "Take me to the station, please." The taxi started moving again. Just as she was about to enter the hotel, Victoria suddenly turned and glanced in our direction. Ethan noticed her pause. "What's wrong?" Victoria scanned the street, unsure why she had suddenly felt the urge to look back. "It's nothing." She forced a smile and took Ethan's arm, walking into the hotel. She had finally gotten her wish, yet her heart felt increasingly empty. She shook her head, trying to dispel the feeling of loss, attributing it to the exhaustion of the past few days. Of course, I didn't see any of this. I was already on my way. I returned to Anson City that night and was back at work the next day as if nothing had happened. Victoria's betrayal didn't cause a major upheaval in my life. The only thing was a lingering sense of unfamiliarity. Someone who had been by my side for 7 years had simply vanished into the river of time. A month went by, and I had almost fully recovered from the hurt Victoria had caused me. Then, I was suddenly assigned a business trip to Linchester. I hadn't been back since that day. Seeing the destination, I froze for a moment before accepting the assignment. Linchester was a big city. It was just a few days for work. The chances of running into her were slim. After reassuring myself, I boarded the high-speed train back to Linchester once again. Chapter 6. "Isabel Croft?" I asked, surprised to see the person sitting behind the executive desk. Hearing her name, Isabel looked up. After a 2-second pause, a smile spread across her face. "Sincere Clark. Long time no see." In college, Isabel and I had a brief connection. In my sophomore year, she joined the rollerblading club, and as the president, I taught her how to skate. But half a year later, I heard she had received a scholarship to study abroad and had already left. We never saw each other again after that. I never imagined that the company I worked for belonged to her family. After a few pleasantries, I got down to business, briefing her on the details of my assignment. We worked through the morning. Just as we finished, Isabel spoke in a casual tone. "I hear you're single now." I froze for a second and looked up, meeting her gaze, confused as to why she would bring that up. After I confirmed it, Isabel came around from her desk, and her next words left me stunned. "I was wondering if you'd be interested in giving us a try." My body tensed. I looked at her, needing to ask the question on my mind. Why the sudden proposal? And how did you know I was single? Isabel and I were from 2 completely different worlds. Hearing those words from her felt incredibly strange. She smiled and sat down across from me, her demeanor perfectly candid. "I heard from some friends that you were dating a girl named Victoria Young. About a month ago, I received an invitation from Ethan Miller. His bride was Victoria Young. As for why I'm asking you, it's because, after careful consideration, I think you're the most suitable candidate." "Ethan worked here too?" I frowned in annoyance, but my thoughts quickly returned to her proposition. Isabel's frankness was so disarming that it left me speechless, but after a moment of silence, I found my voice. "I'm sorry, but I'm not looking to start a new relationship right now. Even if I were, it wouldn't be now. It had been less than 2 months since I found out about Victoria's marriage and our subsequent breakup. Starting a new relationship at this point might help me get over the last one faster, but it wouldn't be fair to the other person. Just like it wasn't fair to me when I was used as a substitute 7 years ago." Hearing my rejection, Isabel didn't seem offended at all. Instead, she smoothly changed the subject. "Well then, since we're old friends reuniting, treating me to lunch isn't too much to ask, is it?" After I agreed, a smile returned to her face. As we walked downstairs, Isabel handed me her car keys. I was about to go get the car when someone suddenly stepped in front of me. Chapter 7. Sincere, what are you doing here, and who is she? Recognizing the person blocking my path as Victoria, I took a step back. What rotten luck. I had thought I could get through a simple business trip without seeing her. But it turned out Ethan worked at the same company, and now I had run into the last person I ever wanted to see right outside the building. Her accusatory tone was laughable. "Where I am is none of your business." Victoria pointed a finger at me, but then seemed to realize she had no right to question me anymore. She was left speechless, her chest tight with frustration. I walked around her, but she reached out and grabbed Isabel's arm. "What's your relationship with him?" I couldn't understand Victoria's behavior. She was the one who betrayed our relationship. She was the one who married another man behind my back. Now she was acting like a wife who had caught her husband cheating, shouting and demanding answers. I turned and gripped her wrist. She yelped in pain and instinctively let go of Isabel, looking at me with disbelief. Sincere, you'd hurt me for her? I thought you were so devoted. It's only been a month and you've already moved on. Our 7 years must have been an act for you. My heart, which I thought could no longer feel pain, clenched tightly at her accusation. Anyone could doubt my sincerity, but she was the one with the least right to. The feeling passed in an instant. I composed myself, my expression turning colder. I shoved her hand away, watching impassively as she stumbled and nearly fell. Do the questions you're asking have anything to do with you? And speaking of those 7 years, at least I wasn't the one living a lie. Victoria, I don't want this to get ugly, but if you push me, I can always find ways to make things difficult for you. Seeing her tremble at my words, I took Isabel's arm and led her to the passenger side of the car. By the time I was in the driver's seat, Victoria was still standing in front of the car. I didn't spare her another glance. I put the car in reverse and drove away in the opposite direction. In the rearview mirror, just as we were pulling away, I saw Ethan Miller appear from somewhere and pull Victoria into his arms. What I didn't know was that Ethan had been there since Victoria first confronted me. He had stayed back, only stepping in to comfort her after I had left. Even if I had known, I wouldn't have cared. I tore my eyes from the mirror and apologized to Isabel. I'm sorry. I never expected to run into her here, let alone drag you into it. Isabel just smiled, indicating it didn't bother her. It wasn't until the end of our meal that she brought up her earlier proposal. You can reconsider what I said earlier. Actually, there's something I didn't mention. I'm an only child, so if we were to get married, our first child would have to take my last name. I found out you're on your own, which is why I said you were the most suitable candidate. Besides, I trust your character. If you're open to it, I think we could start by getting to know each other. As for whether it will work out, time will tell, won't it? Looking at Isabel's sincere expression, before I even realized what I was doing, I heard the clink of our glasses as she raised hers to mine. Well then, I look forward to getting to know you. Boyfriend. Chapter 8. Somehow I had become Isabel Croft's boyfriend. Even a week later, as I finished my business trip and headed back to Anson City, I still felt a little dazed. I couldn't figure out what possessed me to agree to her proposal during that lunch. But what was done was done. There was no turning back, so I decided to just go with the flow. A month passed. My colleagues at the branch office knew I had a new girlfriend, but no one knew who she was. Isabel was, after all, the CEO's daughter. I didn't want to invite unnecessary complications by revealing too much. Besides, I had no intention of using my relationship with her for personal gain. As we continued to spend time together, my relationship with Isabel grew stronger and genuine feelings began to develop between us. As the new year approached, Isabel, knowing I would be alone, invited me to Linchester to celebrate with her family. I didn't refuse. Since we were a couple, I felt the man should be more proactive in nurturing the relationship. I took a few days off and went back early. I had already cleaned my house and stocked it with all the necessities Isabel might need for her occasional visits. On New Year's Eve, I was invited to the Crofts' home to ring in the new year with her parents. The Croft family was simple, just Richard and Helen, and their only daughter Isabel. The rest of the household staff were maids. Meeting her parents put my anxieties to rest. I had been worried they would disapprove of me, thinking I wasn't good enough for Isabel. Richard Croft was still a director at the company, grooming Isabel to take over one day. Helen Croft was a university professor with a gentle, scholarly air about her. They treated me like a member of the family, their demeanor warm and natural. After a few drinks with Richard, he opened up and started chatting about some local gossip. Some people have money, but no idea how to invest it. They get fooled by a few sweet words and throw it all away, yet they're the last to see it. If they keep this up, they're in for a world of hurt. The name he mentioned caught my attention. I asked, Mr. Croft, is the person you're talking about named Walter Young? When he confirmed it, I inwardly sighed. It seemed my fate with Victoria was truly a tangled mess. The Youngs also had only one child, Victoria. 6 months ago, their property had been demolished, and they had received a compensation of over $10 million. Victoria had never told me about this. A sense of tragedy washed over me. I had laid my heart bare for Victoria, yet she never shared anything significant with me. Even after 7 years together, during which I never used a penny of her money, She was still guarded, afraid I would covet her family's fortune. After receiving the compensation, the Youngs bought a villa right next to the Crofts. And the Walter Young that Richard was talking about was Victoria's father. As for the person who had swindled them, it was Ethan Miller. After Victoria and Ethan got married, Ethan claimed his parents' overseas company was having cash flow problems. Behind her parents' backs, Victoria gave him most of the compensation money. When her parents found out, not only did they not reprimand her, but they also believed Ethan's story and gave him another $2 million for his business. All because Ethan had promised them a 30% stake in the company. I asked a friend overseas, Richard continued. The company the Millers invested in has problems that money can't solve. The Youngs' money is just going to disappear without a trace. I calmly changed the subject, no longer wanting to discuss anything related to Victoria. It was past midnight when I finally decided to leave. Isabel walked me out, and we stood side by side outside the villa. The cold wind sobered me up instantly. I took Isabel's hand and tucked it into my pocket to keep it warm. Watching the fireworks explode in the night sky, I felt a profound sense of happiness. But this peaceful moment was shattered by an angry complaint. Chapter 9. I just asked you to build a snowman with me, and you won't even do that, Ethan. What is wrong with you? I instinctively turned toward the source of the voice. I saw Victoria tugging at Ethan's sleeve, her expression on the verge of eruption. Are you a child? It's freezing out here. Who builds a snowman in this weather? Besides, I have to call my parents. Can you give me some personal space? Seeing this, I was so surprised that I forgot to move. Victoria had a crush on Ethan for 10 years. She had found me, a look-alike, to be his substitute, and even married him behind my back. I had thought that, at the very least, she would be happy after marrying him. But it seemed that wasn't the case. The warm, soft feeling in my hand brought me back to my senses. I turned to Isabel and smiled. Let's go, I said softly. Isabel gently squeezed my hand and nodded with a smile. Just as we walked past, Victoria looked up towards the villa's entrance, catching only the sight of Isabel and me walking away hand in hand. She stopped pulling at Ethan, her expression frozen as she stared after us. Ethan, now free from her grasp, strode out of the villa. He didn't notice us walking ahead of him. He quickly passed us and left the residential area. Where he was going was none of my business. After the new year, I returned to Anson City. Isabel's work was in Linchester, so she didn't come with me. With her parents' approval, our relationship progressed even further. The next time I heard news about Victoria was in April. After a full year, my transfer ended. I was reassigned back to the head office in Linchester and even received a promotion. The day after I returned, I went to visit Isabel's parents and noticed that the villa next door, where the Youngs lived, was being emptied out. Later, while chatting with Richard and Helen, I learned what had happened. The Youngs had not only poured most of their compensation money into Ethan's company, but had also convinced their relatives and friends, who had also received compensation, to invest as well. But from last year to this April, they hadn't seen a single dollar in return. All the money they had invested had vanished. Now their relatives were hounding them for the money, forcing them to sell the villa they had barely lived in. Hearing this, I felt no strong emotions. Not long after, I heard from a mutual friend that Victoria and Ethan's relationship had completely imploded. Their days were filled with constant fighting, becoming the source of much local gossip. When their relatives started demanding their money back, Victoria had no choice but to put pressure on Ethan. What no one knew was that Ethan's sole purpose in returning from abroad was to get his hands on the Young family's compensation money. With the money secured, he no longer had any reason to pretend with Victoria. Victoria couldn't accept this reality. After a few days in a daze, she started following Ethan everywhere. Somehow, she found out that he was already married overseas. On the day Ethan secretly bought a plane ticket to flee the country, Victoria, along with the police, cornered him at the airport. Victoria reported him for bigamy and marriage fraud, and she had the evidence to prove it. Ethan was taken into custody for investigation and was sentenced shortly after. For the crimes of bigamy and fraud, with a large sum of money involved, Ethan Miller was sentenced to 5 years in prison. On the day of the verdict, I heard that Victoria stood outside the courthouse for a long time. When I heard the news, I felt a flicker of emotion, a sigh for the whole affair, but nothing more. I never thought that Victoria, who I assumed I would never have contact with again, would turn around and ask me to get back together shortly after Ethan was imprisoned. Chapter 10. Seeing Victoria suddenly rush over and throw her arms around me, I froze for a second before quickly pushing her away. I took 2 steps back to create distance, my expression impatient. Have some self-respect. Victoria seemed not to hear the coldness in my voice and stepped closer again. Sincere, Ethan tricked me. I see him for who he really is now. Let's get back together. You wanted to get married, right? If we get back together, we can get married, okay? Her words made my frown deepen. Did she really believe that no matter what she did, people would forgive her unconditionally? I have a girlfriend, and even if I didn't, do you really think I would ever get back together with you? Victoria shook her head, refusing to accept it. It doesn't matter, just break up with her. We were together for 7 years. I'm the one who's right for you. I let out a derisive laugh, shattering her delusion. And why would I do that for you? Victoria didn't even have to think. The answer came tumbling out. Because you love me. For a moment her answer threw me. I did love her once, but that love had died the moment I learned the truth. When she didn't get a response, she looked up at me, only to see me staring back, my eyes filled with a mocking smile. But I don't love you anymore. Victoria, no one will tolerate your behavior without limits. A chance missed is a chance lost. You don't get a second try. Without waiting for her reaction, I walked past her and left. I thought that would be the end of it, but the next day after work, I was just a few minutes late coming downstairs and saw Isabel being cornered by Victoria. You should back off. Sincere and I were together for 7 years. Our bond isn't something you can compete with. I arrived just in time to hear her threat. Before I could speak, Isabel responded with calm indifference. You don't seem to understand. No matter how deep a connection is, it will wither if one person only takes and never gives. Your so-called 7 years are worthless to me. They're not a threat. And unlike you, I don't build my life around a man. Even if a relationship fails, I wouldn't end up like this. Perhaps stung by Isabel's undisguised scorn, Victoria suddenly raised her hand to slap her. I didn't give her the chance. I caught her wrist before her hand could land and shoved her away forcefully. I looked down at Victoria, who had fallen to the ground, my eyes filled with nothing but disgust. Victoria, do you have any idea how disgusting you look right now? I took Isabel's hand. From the ground, Victoria cried out, Sincere, after 7 years, how can you be so cruel? When it came to cruelty, no one could match her. I sneered inwardly but didn't bother to reply. I simply led Isabel away. There was no point in arguing with someone trapped in their own delusion. Isabel wasn't upset by the incident. She had a calm and confident nature and didn't let such trivial matters bother her. But I felt I owed her an apology. After talking it over, we decided to get engaged in a month and married the following year. After the news of our engagement spread, Victoria came looking for me 2 more times. When she realized all she would get was my cold indifference, she finally stopped. I didn't see or hear from her for a long time after that. It wasn't until the 2nd year of my marriage to Isabel that I heard she and her parents had moved away from Linchester for good. By then, Isabel and I had our first child, and our life together was happy and fulfilling.